Welcome to episode 41, Construction Nation. This is Sue Dyer, your host of the Construction Dream Team, where I interview industry leaders and experts so you can learn about the people side of construction and build your construction dream team based on other people's experience so you don't have to go through the school of hard knocks. You can actually learn what you need to learn so you can have your dream team today rather than waiting decades. So I just want to remind everybody that we have an offer out there right now. We're beta testing our scorecards. We've never offered them to any projects other than the ones that we've worked on. And now we are offering them to any project, and we're going to see how that goes. So if anybody's interested, just send me a quick email at sue@constructiondreamteam.com. Today, I was so lucky to have one of my favorite people. I have to tell you that our guest today, Ziggy, is someone I met several decades ago. And, you meet those people and you think, I just love the way they think. And that's Ziggy, because you can sit in a room with a whole bunch of people and they can be talking about an issue, and Ziggy may not even be saying anything, but then when he says something, he turns the whole thing upside down, inside out, and you look at it and everybody goes, huh, never thought of that before. That's Ziggy. So I'm so happy that he's here today. So let me just tell you a little bit about him. He is the president and CEO of A Design Plus Consulting. It's a services, and they began in 2018 as an architectural design and consultancy. They're a firm that specializes in data-driven processes to plan, design, and construct healing, learning, and discovering buildings. See, that tells you who he is. The firm provides design services, operations consulting, and technology strategies for its client. So he's always pushing the envelope of what's possible and integrating and marrying things. And today we're going to be talking about curiosity. So I just want to welcome you, Zig, to Construction Dream Team.
Wow. Thanks for having me. It's been a while.
It has been. So today we're going to focus a little bit on curiosity. So from your point of view, what is curiosity and why is it important in our teams?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think curiosity is really trying to understand what else is out there and what could be done differently. So I would tie it to developing a unique solution for a need or a problem. So it's different than responding to a difficult challenge, which there may not be an obvious solution. But I think curiosity could be applied to more mundane situations where you're constantly trying to improve the situation. I would say curiosity forces someone to be engaged and committed to a specific outcome. And sometimes curiosity may not yield anything valuable, and I think that's okay. The benefit is to learn and to define your boundaries of what the question should be. And the outcome is that it directs you or the team to become a more of a learning-based type of group.
So in a meeting, what would this look like if someone were to sort of embed some curiosity?
Well, I think as you've accused me, listening.
I've witnessed.
Yes. I think many of us in the design and construction industry has big personalities, and we're often seen talking past each other, and I'm sure you won't believe it, but I do it as well. However, I think for all of us to be curious, we really need to see what our surroundings have and question it to say, does that make sense? And could there be a better way?
Okay. Yeah. So that sounds like curiosity. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, if I wanted to start building curiosity within my team, because I don't know anyone who wouldn't say they want to have continuous improvement or continually pushing things to be better or
Sure.
improved. What might I do?
Well, I think you really need two things to start building this kind of culture of curiosity. One is you have to assume that there's a better way to do something, or what I call rejecting the status quo. So, as humans, we're creatures of habit. I'm certainly guilty when I go to certain restaurants, to always order the same thing, even though I know that they have something that's special and it's probably tastes better. So, yeah, that's boring, but I'm comfortable. So, curiosity requires us to be uncomfortable with our internal biases and to question whether something can be better or not. So this also doesn't mean that a person should use bad judgment or just make decisions because they can. Curiosity should be more of a bunch of data points that you put together to make the best decision going forward. And I think the other thing that one needs is that you need to be patient and forgiving, especially if you're a leader, because a curious team is going to take longer because they're not going to be doing the tried and true method. So, and a good example of this is I don't know if you or some of your listeners use Waze. So,
Yes.
Waze always gives me directions that I say, I don't get it, but I'm going to do it because it's Waze. And Waze has this kind of learning algorithm and knows where all the traffic is, and we just kind of trust it. So, in some degree or some level, Waze is a bit of a curious app, but it takes time to confirm that those different street paths or highway paths are faster. And as a human, we need to be patient with ourselves that sometimes we're not always going to make the best decision first time go around.
Got it. So, what do you have some examples of? I know you've been working for integrating things and creating all sorts of different types of methodologies for bringing together design and construction
Hmm.
in unique ways. Do you have some
Hmm.
examples of how curiosity is playing out and how it has played out in some of your
Yeah,
projects?
absolutely. How long did you say the program was? Because I
Oh,
do.
we've got about 40 minutes total.
All right. Okay. Well, I'll just touch on a couple. So one is really with partnering projects requires actually a lot of curiosity. And you probably know better than I that many people, when they come to a team, come with bias. And when you partner a project, you really have to listen to the other team members and ultimately make their needs your needs so that the overall outcome is less problematic. So the only way I believe that that could really be done is the team members have to be curious to understand what the plight of the other team members are, because if they don't, then same thing's going to happen, and unfortunately the results are not going to be where you'd like them to be. So I think at a very basic level, as you kind of described on a human interaction level, we all need to be curious, especially if we want a high performance uh, team. The other project that we like sharing is about a project where a client wanted to fund the construction of a hospital, and like many projects, not just hospital projects, the funding availability was not sufficient to meet the user's desires for the hospital. Or as one of my former clients would like to say, they have champagne taste on a beer budget.
That never happens.
No, that never does. So we got involved to understand what the user needs were while respecting the boundaries of the client's funding availability, and question how would specific clinical outcomes could be achieved differently. And not getting into too much of the details, but some of the questions were, well, why are you only working 7 hours a day? Or could this person be treated in a different room instead of tying up the room that is highly valuable and has all this expensive equipment in it? So the short story is that we were able to demonstrate that a significant amount of the area for the hospital could be reduced and bring the cost of the project within the funding envelope of the client. And that then allowed for another project, which happened to be a research building. That project became significantly larger. And this would have not happened if the client and their team wasn't curious into what's possible. So I think you need to both have the drive and the interest to see what's out there, but also be willing to change, which is not always the case. And I also think if you are willing to change, then you'll get those great results that you're hoping to get.
So I'm assuming that with change, you have levels of different people and organizations and stakeholders who will need to buy in.
Absolutely. And education is a responsibility of curiosity. So if you have this new idea that you think is the best thing since sliced bread, you need to get everyone on board. Otherwise, people are just going to listen to you and then do things the way they always do.
And is there a level, to me, curiosity is sort of the flip side of creativity. And creativity has a lot of energy into it. You're curious, and so you're creating different ways of looking at things. So there's some creation there. And that sort of brings on a level of energy to the team. Do you see that happening? Does that energy help fuel the education and the willingness of people to move forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I see it slightly differently, but I think they're both synergistically, in the sense that creativity is more about the investigation and the outcome of a specific task. And creativity definitely requires curiosity because, and there have been a lot of studies that show there are many people that are naturally creative, that they may not need to be curious, but I was not gifted with that natural ability to be naturally creative. So I personally have to think about things. And that curiosity allows me and the people that I interact with to be more creative because we're asking questions about what could be different.
That makes sense. So, what do you see as some of the biggest barriers to curiosity on projects or within teams or even around particular issue, a mundane issue?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I think our internal biases or programming prevents us from being more curious. And there's a great TED talk by, I'm forgetting, I know his last name. I think it's Sir Kenneth Robinson, and he's an educator. And he talks about how the most creative students are kindergartners because they're not biased. And then as students get more educated and more trained, they become less curious. And I think that is definitely true for all of us adults. So I think the barriers to curiosity is associated with our internal biases and our own impatience, because we all want things yesterday. And as wonderful as technology can be, I think it's made us all less patient. And I think the last thing I would mention is that curiosity requires us to be incorrect. So a lot of times we want to be right about things, and curiosity is about having a hunch. And no one likes to be wrong about having a hunch about something. We all like to be right, especially if I'm behind the wheel and I don't have directions and my wife is yelling at me that we're going the wrong way. And I say, oh no, I got this all figured out. So if you're curious, you need to accept that you might be wrong, and that's okay. But you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable about it.
Yeah. If you've said that several times, you've got to be comfortable about being uncomfortable. Also comes to my mind about, you talked about curiosity is really fueled by looking at mundane things. And I'm thinking on most of our project teams and even in organizations, the mundane things get no attention whatsoever because it's the tyranny of either it's urgent or it's important or it's a fire. And those are the things that seem to get all the attention.
Yeah.
So, how do we get people like we almost need a curiosity czar, somebody who's going to be looking at those things that they're just curious about to push the envelope?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I am definitely not a curiosity czar, but I do read a lot. And one of the books that I've read by Stephen Covey, and I think it was the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Uh-huh.
He talked about a matrix of urgent, non-urgent, and important and non-important, and how many of us, as you correctly said, focus on the urgent, non-important task as opposed to the important, non-urgent task. So what I often tell, excuse me, people, especially on my team, where does that fall in the matrix? So that when we're addressing issues, we're addressing the right issues that are important, but maybe not as urgent.
Perfect. That sounds like it would definitely be smart. But even some of the most mundane things, you might have a breakthrough if you really
Right.
thought about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the mundane things tend to cause the most trouble.
Isn't that interesting? Tell me more
Yeah.
about that. Talk more about that.
So I can just say, as a design professional, we're tasked with designing projects that meet the building code. And many of us would say that the building code is as dry and as mundane as it gets, in a very respectful way, of course. I mean, it's very important. We all have to implement the health, safety, and welfare of our community. However, it is mundane, and a lot of us forget how important it is and tend to make mistakes. And it isn't until someone finds out that, oh, this particular thing isn't meeting the code. And I think if we all exhibited more curiosity to confirm that, yeah, our design meets the code for whichever building code it is, we would have less challenges and ultimately, ideally, have more creative solutions with less problems.
Amen. Because I see that all the time.
Yeah,
all
yeah,
the time. We see that a
yeah,
lot. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, curiosity, you're going to make me feel like I'm going to have to be much more curious about the mundane things in my life. And I think that'll be pretty exciting.
Yeah, well, the whole point with curiosity, I think, is being engaged and being alive with where you're at. And that's what excites me about being curious is that I think about what I'm doing instead of just sitting back and enjoying the view, which is also good and important, but I prefer to be more engaged.
Cool. That really makes me think too about how we want to engage employees. There's so much talk about engaging people these days that it seems like curiosity would be another fuel for that. Even if you're trying to engage people so that they integrate, engage people so that they align, whatever the purpose is, seems like curiosity would be another really important, could be a really important component to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for an employee, as you correctly mentioned, if an employee sees that an employer or supervisor is curious about who they are and what their professional development goals are, I think they tend to be more productive and more loyal of an employee instead of coming in from 9 to 5 and doing their job. Or at least that's been my experience where if we make an investment in the employee, they of course make an investment in the company.
Yes. Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about your company, A Designing plus Consulting, and what kind of what you're
Sure.
doing, how you approach it. I know it's multifactional.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for asking. So we're a small design and consulting practice of mostly healthcare architects, technologists, and we have two medical doctors, and we all believe that healthcare buildings can be planned, designed, constructed, and operated better. We're about 18 months old, as you mentioned earlier, but the firm leaders all have almost 3 decades of experience. And we know that there's a better way of performing our job. And I think that's what unites us as a team, and being curious, or as I like saying, rejecting the status quo. And our main office is in downtown San Francisco with a team of our two doctors and technologists are in India. And we're also considering having a presence in China. And your listeners might be wondering, why are we going there? And the reality is, both India and China have really challenging project needs. And I feel, at least with my experiences, that their clients are more open to curiosity and unique solutions as opposed to, this is what we want done here. And our work that we've been doing is divided between design services and consulting work. And we also have one of our operational modeling tools on our website, so that if a user who is curious can play with the tool and see how big or small a medical facility needs to be. And we hope that more people in the industry will use this in the future.
So tell me more about the consulting side. The design side, I think everyone will be familiar sort of how design works, even though I know yours is a little different. Tell us more about your operational consulting.
Yeah, so that has to do with what we call both building the right building and sizing the right building. So oftentimes, as a designer or even a builder, when a client comes to them, they'll say, "I want X," and sometimes, not all the time, the, myself or my colleagues will say, "We don't think that's right," but that's what they want, and of course we want to do it for them. So the consulting side of the business allows us to question, is this the right solution? Is there enough of X or Y in the building? And more importantly, how will it fit into the future needs of the facility? Because especially with healthcare, many healthcare projects are constantly evolving. I jokingly say I've never worked on a large project that wasn't being remodeled before it was opened. And not to say that our clients aren't curious, I think it's more that the needs of healthcare are just ever changing. So if we can introduce a curious methodology or curious approach, we think change management will be, or the changes from a lack of curiosity could be more beneficial to the project.
That's exciting. And I
Yeah,
can see how it would give you like a different hat to wear at a different time frame in
right.
the process. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
that's exciting. So I know you have led a lot of things. You were the chair of the IPD committee, and you have led organizations, some pretty large organizations, and you have led some nonprofits that I know you're involved with. So tell me what you think your strengths as a leader might be.
Um, so don't laugh, but I would say it's my curiosity.
I think that's true. I'm glad you built a business around that.
Yeah. So I would say that I've always felt that there could be a better way of doing things. And I don't mean it in the sense that I know better. I think it's really important to see what everyone else thinks and get their opinion and their buy-in. But then I think it's really back to Sue, what you mentioned, more of the creative questioning of, well, what if we did this or what if we did that? And then getting everyone on board and agreeing with it. It is much easier said than done because we're all guilty of having our own biases. So again, curiosity has to do with convincing others that this is the right thing to do for this particular situation.
Yeah, it sounds like, you can't do it by yourself. This is a really small thing.
No,
Yeah.
as much as we all would like to. No.
So I think that's probably another one of your strengths as a leader is not only to be curious, but to engage the team in a manner that they move along and follow it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And more importantly, sometimes someone on the team is going to point out something that we didn't think of that may totally change what the outcome is.
Yes.
And that's important for everyone to see that.
So I know in your career, you have done many different things, and not everything has always gone exactly as planned. So take us back to a really big challenge you faced and take us back to the very worst moment you faced in that challenge.
So does the program come with post counseling sessions? Because it could be traumatic for me.
We might have to engage that.
Yeah. So when I started my last company, which was called Aditas, we were looking for new clients. And as most people would do, I went back to some of my former clients. And one of them who I spoke with, he very candidly said, well, I'm not paying for your PhD experiment. So, of course, I could have looked down and felt dismissed, which I was. But I turned it around and said, okay, do you know someone who will? And to his credit, he referred us to someone who became a client.
That's pretty smart.
Yeah. So, but with that being said, that person lost patience with us, and we ended up getting fired on the job. And I think the lesson or the experience that I want to share with everyone is that curiosity comes with risk, and you need someone to be patient when you're curious because things don't always work out the way you hope them to be.
And what did you learn from the overall process of this?
That I guess you need to be, as someone has told me, persistently consistent and consistently persistent. You just
Yeah.
have to. You definitely need your share resilience with curiosity because you are going to have disappointment. And the important thing to the story is, yes, a client did not benefit from the curious outcome, but many other clients in the future did. And the important thing is we didn't give up.
Awesome. Don't give up out there, Construction Nation.
Yeah.
Success is sometimes just around the corner.
Yeah, absolutely.
I always tell myself I don't fail until I stop trying. I haven't failed. Just keep moving forward.
I was at a 4th of July party and someone mentioned to me that quitters never win and winners never quit. And I thought that was a great great expression to really capture that emotion.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's the tenacity of some of
Yeah.
us who just
Yeah,
keep
exactly.
just keep making it happen out there.
Exactly. Exactly.
So along those lines, what's the best advice you have ever gotten?
So when I became a principal at the architecture firm that I worked at, I'd be the first to admit that I was definitely not ready for it. So I asked the senior partner if we could have lunch, maybe give me some words of advice. And so I asked him, what advice do you have that you could share? And he just said, be confident. And I've never forgotten that. And it's really helped me trust that my assumptions and desires were right. He didn't mean be confident and don't change your ways. I think what he meant was be confident in your beliefs and not be wavering around what it is that you want to go for.
Yeah. So, and I guess you have to act as if you are what you want to be until
Yeah,
you become it. Huh?
yeah, exactly, exactly.
So I know that you work with a lot of different technologies and models and things that you've been working on, but what's your very favorite piece of tech that you use?
That's a good question. Um, Probably my phone. If I had to pick anything, any one thing, because it really allows me to do almost anything anywhere. I'm surprised at how little I use my computer. And mind you, we used computers when they took up the space of like an entire building, and and now we carry around computers in a backpack. And so now I use my phone for most things, and it's only certain things that I use a computer for, and it allows us to do almost everything.
Yeah, amazing how that's changed in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
We ask everyone to share with us a gift, and this is a resource that you would recommend for us to maybe learn more about being curious, or about anything that leading, whatever you would like to share with Construction Nation. What you got for us?
Sure. Well, I have 3 books, and I could email them to you, but I'll just share them for the listeners. So the first one is called "A More Beautiful Question" by Warren Berger, and I think that really talks about being curious and understanding the value of curiosity. The next one is called "Collective Genius: The Art and Practice of Leading Innovation," and that is, and there are several authors. So, but I'll share the information with you. But that talks about the benefit of curiosity on a team. And the book that I really love is called Creativity Inc. Overcoming the Unseen Forces That Stand in the Way of True Inspiration, by Ed Catmull and Amy Wallace. And some of your listeners may know who Ed Catmull is, but he's one of the founders and president of Pixar. And Creativity Inc. is about his story of making a full feature-length animation video, um, from beginning to end, fully digital, and how he initially thought it would take 10 years, and it ended up taking um, 20 years. And the book is about how curiosity fueled all of that in a real world situation.
That's exciting. Thank you. Thank you for that. And
Sure,
we'll put all of these in the show notes so
sure,
everyone will have that. And also, if you want to give us me a link for the operational tool that's on your website, I can stick
sure.
that in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how can Construction Nation get a hold of you?
Well, probably the easiest and most direct way is via email. So zig.rubel@adesignConsult.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn, and I'll share the link with you.
And we'll put both of those in the show notes as well.
Great.
So, what kind of parting advice might you give us as we sit here thinking, I could probably be more curious? What is something I could do today or tomorrow that I could do and, just start making this happen?
I think you need to wake up feeling uncomfortable and wanting to change the world. I mean, I think if you're curious, someone believes that something could be better. And they're not going to believe that it's better or could be better unless they're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I think you need both.
Very, very good. I think all of us have something in our lives, whether it's how we get our email to how the ringtones on our phone to something at home, like how your systems and processes at home that we
Sure.
could be working to improve. So Construction Nation, pick something today and be curious about it to make it better. Thank you so much, Zig, for being with us today.
Sure.
So you got our minds going, and send us what you come up with. Send it to us so I can share it with Zig. And remember, Construction Nation, dream teams don't just happen. They are built one step at a time. And maybe one of those steps is being more curious and embedding that in your team so they will be more curious. And this allows your dream team to really tap into your collective wisdom and share completely across the entire industry. And that's how these changes occur. And we all improve because of it. Nothing ever sits still. And I hear people in the industry talking about a sea change occurring with the emergence of really mindsets, collaboration, methodologies for working together, and AI. There's so many new things happening. We need to be curious on how do we implement these things. We need to be curious about what we're going to do to take things to the next level, because believe me, other industries are, and we need to be curious as well. So I thank everyone for joining me. Remember, we do drop every Monday morning at 4 a.m. So please join me next week when I will interview another industry expert or leader, and we can learn more about how to create our construction dream team. Thank you all so much for joining me. Thank you, Zig.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Thank you for having me and introducing me to your communities.
Thank you so much. I will catch you next time, Construction Nation. Have a great week.